Hey, howdy hey, and welcome back to Emily's Adventures in Horrorland. Today's film comes at the request of Corey Cronogue, and it is an example of surrealist body horror. Hehe, yes. I don't pretend to be very knowledgeable about this area of cinema, but I have come across surrealism at different points in my education. For example, in A-level French we had to watch Salvador Dali's Un Chien Andalou with its infamous eye-cutting scene. Lovely. And apparently the surrealism movement has its roots in Dadaism, which is something I studied for a while at university. You should have heard my manifestos. So grandiloquent. So nonsensical. But anyway. Eraserhead is a 1977 surrealist body horror film, the first full-length movie by filmmaker David Lynch. Many of his projects, like Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, etc., tend to involve a lot of dark comedy and drawn-out unsettling scenes. So, you ready to get artsy? Hell yeah you are! Let's get right to the nub of today's film. Eraserhead begins with our protagonist with a planet on the side of his head. He looks rather troubled about this. Actually, before we start, and because I am in charge here, Bernard, let's take away my normal background music so that you can fully appreciate the sounds of the movie itself. Here we have one of the planet's craters, and inside is an emaciated, forlorn-looking man who is called the Man in the Planet in the end credits. And I have some theories about him, which I will go into later. And here is our main character, Henry Spencer. Nice hair, dude. We see him walking under a strange-looking bridge, along ruined streets and over piles of rubble and dirt. Nice socks also. You may have noticed by now that the film uses a lot of lingering shots, and generally is very slow-paced to allow the sense of unease to build. Apparently, the original greenlit script was only 21 pages long, which led the American Film Institute to believe that the finished product would only be 20 minutes long, as opposed to 88. Plenty of scenes with little to no dialogue. It reminds me a lot of what playwright and director Harold Pinter liked to call his two types of silence. One where no word is spoken, the other when perhaps a torrent of language is being employed. But I don't think this is strictly applicable to this kind of film, because the visuals and the meticulously mixed soundtrack work so hard to communicate to the viewer, whereas in a staged play, the silence might have to speak all by itself. Henry enters a depressing-looking room in an empty building, where he's followed by imposing silhouettes. Poor dude. I just want to give him a cup of tea, you know, and some marmalade on toast. Tell him everything's going to be okay. Hey, nice pocket protector. You know what? I like your style, dude. You are one neat, cool, hip, keen and groovy cat. Henry is told by the beautiful girl across the hall, yes, that is her name, that his girlfriend Mary has invited him to dinner.
You're invited to dinner.
He reflects on this in his flat while waiting for one of his socks to dry. Just the one. I think I can hear his hair growing. Later on, Henry meets with Mary at her parents' house and converses awkwardly with her mother.
It's Henry, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, suckling pups. Okay. I wondered what that noise was. Also, foreshadowing.
We've got chicken tonight. Strangest damn things. They're man-made. Little damn things. Smaller than my fist. But they're new.
Who are you?
I'm Bill.
Hi, Bill. Henry is asked to carve one of the tiny, tiny chickens that Bill has apparently made, and it begins to do this, which causes Mary's mother to do this.
You'll be all right in a minute.
Excuse me.
Quite the social faux pas there. I mean, meeting the parents is bad enough without chickens spurting blood all over the place. Nobody needs that. The mother asks Henry in private if he and Mary have had sexual intercourse.
Did you and Mary have sexual intercourse?
Well, this just reached maximum levels of discomfort. I spoke too soon. Mary has recently given birth, and so these two now have to get hitched, do the right thing, etc. And that was the first 30 minutes. The thing that Mary has given birth to doesn't look much like a human baby. In fact, it looks more like a sheep and a basilisk fell in love and had a litter, and this was the ugly one they didn't want. But still, Henry smiles at the little one as he comes back to his flat and rests on his bed. Then he proceeds to stare at the radiator, which lights up from inside like that thing in Kevin's basement in Home Alone. The mother is not so happy with her little bundle of terror.
Shut up!
Later that night, she decides to go home to her parents, effectively forcing Henry to take care of the child alone. Well, good thing she got her suitcase out from under the bed before the bed ate it. Now, up until this point, the plot has been fairly comprehensible, a bit abstract, but you could still understand it. Afterwards, however, Henry is left alone with the child, and experiences visions of a singing lady in a radiator, has a bizarre encounter with his neighbour, and is even temporarily decapitated. The meaning of all this is of course open to interpretation, but I think I can talk about some of the more prevalent themes. Eraserhead's dingy, uninviting aesthetic is said to be reminiscent of David Lynch's 5 years of living in a particularly unpleasant part of Philadelphia. It's also said that the film was influenced by Lynch's own fear of fatherhood, as well as the unexpected arrival of his first daughter, who was born with clubbed feet. I think all parents have a slight fear of bringing a disabled child into the world, and this film just takes that to the next illogical extreme. So why does the child have to look so repulsive? Well, one theory that I have is that Henry is an alien, which would explain the child, the plutonium jacuzzi in which he and the beautiful girl from across the hall partake in shenanigans, and also the dead vegetation he keeps in his room, resembling his home planet. It might also explain his own quirky style of dress. That's why his hair is so big, it's full of secrets. But to pin the whole thing on Henry being not of this world kind of defeats the purpose of the whole surrealism thing they were going for. Actually, one thing that is clear to me about Henry is that he kind of maybe has sex on the brain. Oh no, you fucking don't. In fact, there seems to be a constant hum of sexual overtones, and now people are going to tell me my mind's in the gutter, but just look at this scene from the beginning of the film. Tell me you don't know what that's meant to be. Those sheep sperm things, which definitely resemble the child, turn up frequently in scenes that have a sexual context. When Henry is lying next to this woman, they keep appearing in the bed. When the beautiful girl invites herself round for a sleepover, the child's mewling is a worrying distraction for her. And when the lady in the radiator is first seen, well, in the radiator, she takes delight in stamping the sheep sperms to death. Can I show this on YouTube? It's hard to know whether or not Henry is just imagining all these encounters, which would probably include Mary's mother putting the moves on him.
Well, Mary?
But I believe that the presence of the man in the planet and the lady in the radiator are highly significant in any case. The man may represent Henry's libido, as he is seen pulling several levers which clearly have an effect on Henry. In one instance, they even cause his head to pop off. Ahem. Meanwhile, the lady could represent Henry's desire to be rid of his monstrous child. There's the sperm-crushing thing from earlier, but she also sings a song which could be encouraging Henry to put the wretched thing out of its misery.
In heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine.
Another thing which substantiates this theory is the fact that in Henry's strange vision, his disembodied head is stolen by a young boy and used to make erasers for the tips of pencils. And what are erasers for but rubbing out mistakes, like this mewling abomination that should never have been born? Speaking of the child, it begins to cackle cruelly, and Henry takes a pair of scissors to open up the child's wrappings. Inside, its organs are laid bare. See, mothers, this is what happens when you swaddle your babies too tightly. Henry stabs the scissors into the pile of viscera, which... what the hell is that? What is that? What the fuck? What the fuck? Ah! Holy mother of biscuits! The planet from earlier bursts open, locking up the man in the planet's levers, and the lady in the radiator steps forward to warmly embrace Henry. Is it over? Is that the end? Okay. Well, that was Eraserhead, one of the strangest horror movies I've ever seen. And I recommend you see it too, at least once, just for the experience. Even if surrealist horror is not exactly your cup of tea, it's easy to see how unnerving certain scenes in this movie are. So unnerving that Stanley Kubrick would employ it on the set of The Shining to get actors in the right mood. So crazily confounding that it would inspire the production of films like Begotten and Tetsuo the Iron Man. Which, having watched that last one, makes a lot of sense. For those reasons, I'm going to give this one 7.5 jam sandwiches out of 10. If you've got a favourite horror film or anything horror related that you'd like me to review, please let me know in the comments below or otherwise. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio. And what are erasers for but rubbing out mistakes? Like that one.